Good evening, everyone. This is April 1st. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting. Kind of a continuation of our last, which was Zoom bombed on March 20th. So this is kind of finishing up the agenda from then. I have no news or mail. Are there any member updates since previous? The first thing we have on the docket is the docks at Long Lake, which Alicia Day from Park and Rec put in for us. I don't know if, Alicia, if you want to.
Yeah. This project was something we talked about a little bit last time. It was a project that already has been approved for capital funding, but the request was made to run this through CPC since it seemed to be more of a CPC project. So this is the second phase of our dock project that we've had. So the first one was a few years ago, where we put a dock segment on to be able to house the sailing boats. So that dock has been out there for quite a few years, has been amazing. So we are going to use the same system to be able to put in a different section of the dock. So this would be replacing in the swim box itself. There used to be a lane that went down the middle of the swim box and is used by the lifeguards to be able to access any rescues faster than they would if they had to swim out, because they'd be able to obviously run down the dock and then perform a save if they needed. So it'll be the same system that we use for the other dock that we put in a few years ago, but we'll just be, putting it in a different section.
And we're voting on both eligibility and the funding request this evening.
Yep.
Are there any questions for Alicia?
So just a general question, these cube G2 gray components are the main part of the system?
Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the cube G2 gray components look like they're the main part of the system.
Oh, you're talking about like the Excel document that we have with everything listed out? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So they're the what is it? It's 1 foot by 1 foot blocks. So you can create any sort of configuration that you actually want with these dock components.
Vote on eligibility if someone wants to do a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the eligibility of the dock projects.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the eligibility. I think we're all here, so we don't have to dispense with the roll call. So all in favor of the eligibility as presented to us, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Step one, and the funding application, which is for $42,436, and we will have some blended funds coming in from the town to offset that. So we will take this from recreation, and then the blended funds will be deposited into recreation, so it's kind of a net zero. Well, so we have the application for funding.
Make a motion that we approve the application for funding for the Park and Rec dock projects.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the funding. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Alicia, you're all set.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alicia.
We'll talk to you later.
Good night. Bye.
Next on the agenda, we have the Webster land. You have some more to go. Lyle?
Thank you all for having me again, Lyle Webster of the Webster Land. And I can say that we met last Thursday with the appraiser from Hunteman, walked the property, came and saw what he needed to see, shared our new plans and ideas for concept with him, and he's taken that away to do his due diligence with his work. And we're on warrant and
Okay, so any idea when the appraisal comes through? Did he give you?
sworn to by May 1st, sooner if possible.
Yeah, so we'll need to meet before.
Yeah, so either Concom or Select Board will have to put forth an actual application for funding
Yeah.
eligibility beforehand to vote on
Conscom is getting together.
tomorrow night.
Yeah, so we'll just wait until we know, until we have it in hand with dollar figures, and then we may just have to have a quick meeting before town meeting. And we've done that before. Meet in the corner.
Meet on the floor.
Yeah, okay. All right, we wait for you.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Is
Anyone have
the,
questions for Lyle before we let him go?
not for Lyle, but the draft of the article Ryan sent, is that give the right funding opportunities and flexibility and all that stuff that we're looking for? Probably as much question for Steve as
Well, I would say it's up to you guys how you want this done. And how much you have in the open space bucket. I would assume that you would need to borrow the funds.
Yes, we will.
So then it would need to be a borrowing.
So it'd have to be a separate article.
It
It
is
is, it's right, they've got it set up that way.
regardless of what it is. It's separate.
Yeah, good. So how do we determine, like, whether we put anything down or just bond the whole thing? I mean, what's the best way?
Once we find out what the price is gonna be, then we can sit down with town treasurer and Ryan and figure the best cash flow opportunities that we have. I don't know what's in your open space bucket right now.
770?
Yeah, I asked for some updated figures, so I'll probably have those this week, to know exactly what we have in. I don't know if we'll want to drain it all. Let's see. The
Yes.
last figure I had was $1 million for open space. That was from Michelle.
That seems high.
Does that include 24?
That's supposed to be the 2024 actual. This was as of the end of January.
Hmm.
I'm really comfortable.
I don't think we can completely drain it because we have debt service.
Right,
Right, drain it down, right?
Yeah.
right. Take some,
Yes, but as Steve said, you'll figure out the best cash flow,
yeah,
As
the
a,
appropriate cash flow.
as a board, you should figure out how much you're willing to put down.
Yeah.
If anything at all.
Mm.
Borrow the whole thing, you borrow half of it, you can,
Okay.
any amount that you want.
I think as little as possible from our bucket would always be best. The more we can bond, I mean,
Right. Because can we pay that off early if you get a windfall or?
If we bond it, you can't.
You
If we just continue to roll short-term notes,
Oh, yeah.
then we can, like we're doing with the tennis courts right now.
Okay, okay.
What is the term of short-term notes?
As short as 6 months up to a year. And then you just roll it over.
I mean, in the present interest rate environment, would it be better to do the short-term notes, hoping that interest rates go down or not?
Sure, we could do that, yes.
Okay.
Because it will depend in part what the appraisal comes back for, too.
Lyle, are there any other sources of money that have been identified? Grants, etc., donations?
Yes, we are certainly approaching this in a getting to yes fashion, so also working with Littleton Conservation Trust. So if it becomes the wiser thing that the appraisal only gets to a certain level, there would be time left to make a subdivision so that the Littleton Conservation Trust could chip in on the project to bring it through to fruition. So that much is still in the works and on the table to see about getting to a better solution, better alternative for all. Thank you.
You're gonna have enough. Excuse me.
Yes, that's fine, Steve, go ahead.
Is there gonna be enough time to subdivide the parcel if the appraisal comes back May 1st?
The answer is yes.
Any other questions? I guess we wait to hear from you and.
Yep.
And. Right.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, thanks, Jack Gretchen, appreciate that. So the next is the Affordable Housing Trust. I know you got your approval for your project at the last meeting through before all heck broke loose. So Anna Houston is here from the Affordable Housing Trust, and why don't you walk us through what you had come to ask us for?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and CPC members. Thanks for having Affordable Housing Trust here this evening. Unfortunately, I don't have any other members here other than Bartlett because we did not post this as a meeting separately. So in your packet, you would have received a document called the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust 5-year action plan. And so over the course of the last 7 months, we took it as a project to put down in writing what the trust has been doing over the last 5 years. And so specifically, the document goes through its inception as well as some of the different goals and strategies that have been accomplished over the last 5 years. It identifies where we stand with our housing situation and the fact that obviously we would like to continue to build as many housing units below 80% AMI as possible. So then for the next 5 years, 24 to 28, we've identified 5 buckets, if you will, about what we would like to be able to do. Again, it's not anything new and big, but rather to really formulate everything that we've been working on. The first goal is to procure funding for the Affordable Housing Trust and its projects. And these are then broken out into more detail. Strategy 1.1 is actually continue receiving funds from the Community Preservation Committee, inclusionary zoning payments and negotiated developer fees, create a formal agreement with the CPC for annual funding. So it is like our priority number 1 to make sure that we have something more formalized with you all, and I'll get to that in a minute. And so we go through and identify a few other strategies that include exploring receiving funds from the municipalities, general fund, tax title sales, real estate transfer fees, essentially exploring all other potential. And then 1.3, partnering with external housing organizations for technical and financial resources to acquire and create affordable housing. So it goes on to talk more about that. And goal number 2 is to acquire and create affordable housing. you might have noticed that as part of these goals, we actually used language very specifically from the CPA, because if you think about it, we're getting funds from the CPC, and those funds are supposed to be used only for CPC appropriate projects. And so by very clearly defining what our strategies are around those goals, we figured we would be in good stead to do so. Strategy 2.1 is working on the Durkee Farmhouse. Strategy 2.2 is ensuring Hager Homestead's development, affordable units get added to the shared housing inventory, ensuring King Street Common development builds the number of affordable units as approved in the planning board decision. So again, it's just very consistent with what it is that we want as our goals. Goal number 3 is preserve existing affordable housing. And so that could tie in perhaps at some point with housing authority. Goal number 4 is support affordable housing programs. And so this is something that we're exploring this time around to promote programs aimed at keeping residents in their home. And so there are a couple of other towns within the Commonwealth that actually have programs, and we're exploring those along with Liz Trenziak from COA. And then our goal number 5, which is building capacity of the staff, boards, and residents regarding affordable housing. And so by being able to, in the coming months and years, connect more with our various boards and committees to be able to then make sure that all boards and committees are informed about our activities and what it is that we're trying to do with affordable housing. There is some blank information in here, which you may have noticed, and that is around the financials. And that's because at the time that we were doing this, the financials were off. And so I went back to Michelle and Lucia to make sure that we can get all of those aligned. And so it's my understanding that the financial system had changed over. And so there was some information that was just not tracked appropriately. So we are on track right now as of July 1, 2023, and Michelle is working to get us up to snuff for these first 3 quarters of 2024. But the reason why I really wanted to share this with you is hopefully you will take a look at it and know that the dollars that are coming through from CPC will be allocated based off of the goals that we have on here. We now run our meetings this way so that everything aligns with our strategies, and we are solely focused on making sure that we're doing the activities and spending the dollars in that way. Suppose any of you have had a chance to look at it. If you have any questions.
Is this on your website on the town?
It's not on the website yet, simply because the numbers aren't in there
Okay.
yet, so we're waiting.
Should have put
until
it on a flash drive so I could project it.
I don't know that I received it.
It was a while ago.
Okay.
I can send it again because I happen to have it up.
Right, I think I sent it before the
March-
last meeting when I knew
Yeah.
you were gonna be chairing, because Carolyn was gonna be out.
Yeah, March 17th, it looks like there's a bunch of stuff. I'm just gonna erase all the.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the 17th.
So what would you like from us tonight?
Well, so I think as it relates to the action plan, if you all have an opportunity to take a look, and if you have questions, please forward them, and I'd be happy to come back and address any questions that you have. So that's item number 1.
Okay.
And then as a result of the action plan, the key item in here, as I mentioned, strategy 1.1, goal number 1 is to create an agreement with CPC. So Stuart Saginaw, who you all know, is very knowledgeable about CPA funding. And so when I reached out to him to identify, well, how do others do this, he sent to me, and I sent it to you also, if you haven't seen that as well, please take a look. But he sent me a document that essentially says, when CPA funds a housing trust, a grant agreement is a must. And apparently in 2016, there was an amended Massachusetts law that essentially made it so. It says, at a minimum, your agreement should detail within what time frame the funds will be used, what will happen to any excess funds, what reporting and accountability will be required. You will want to be able to show what the money was used for, that makes sense, and whether or not the trust will be able to pay for overhead with the funds or just direct project costs. So in this link that he sent to us, there was also an example agreement. I don't know, has anybody taken a look at that?
And we had one, we found one that I don't think had ever been completed. That
Correct.
Littleton had started.
I have just a couple of copies, if folks want to take a look at it real quick. But the agreement is fairly short. It's only like 4 pages. And I think it's quite thorough. And what he recommended is we have town council take a look at it for us to be able to say, you know, this needs to be tweaked a little bit. And then what the recommendation is that when the CPC approves items to go to town meeting, and that is then passed at town meeting, that then the agreement needs to be signed that says this is how the dollars will be used. So again, if town council says the timing should be different, you know, obviously we'll work accordingly. But in this agreement, it provides the very basics about the appropriation of CPA funds to the Affordable Housing Trust, that they will be used for X, and that they will be used in this amount of time. And then if there are any excess dollars, what happens to those? So kind of real basic stuff. And as an example, when Bartlett Harvey presented the request for the $90,000, in this example, I would presume that if we can get this example agreement reviewed by town council and approved, that if those dollars are then approved at town meeting, that we would enter into an agreement between CPC and Affordable Housing Trust for that 90,000.
So for every project you'd come for us, we would have a grant
Exactly.
agreement separately for each
Exactly.
one.
Right. And so that's what we would propose, given the fact that this seems to be what the process is around the state.
Makes sense. Other questions on that? I know that the finance committee may have some you'd like to weigh in on, or a better approach for us.
I just have a couple of observations. And was just talking about what happens with the excess funds, for example. So they give you 90,000 and this is for the rental help.
Yes.
And what if it doesn't come to 90 and you have extra funds?
Well, that's part of the agreement and something that we have not discussed with the CPC members. I think typically, from what I read, those funds could get reallocated back to the CPC, or if they aren't sent back to the CPC, then how does the trust keep those and account for those? So there are still some questions that need to be ironed out. And I think that if town council is able to benchmark what other towns have done, I think that would be very helpful.
Excuse me, so is this rental program similar to the TRED program that EHS runs?
No,
Because the reading we had on that was CPC funds could not go in to support TRED because the final recipient of the funds was not a 501c3, it was an individual. So I'm just questioning whether this is, a different program that
It is.
is supported, that can be supported by CPC funds. Because the TRED program apparently can't, so I'm just curious.
Yes, the Littleton Residential Assistance Program has been going on since inception, is that correct?
Almost, yeah.
Since the beginning of the trust. And so it is something that is approved if you take a look at the CPC guidelines for housing, it is part of that.
It'll fit that, okay, that's fine, that's good.
So it sounds like that would be something that town council should opine about.
Thanks.
Your question, yeah.
The other, I guess my question is another one for Anna. The balance that you have in the account now, in your trust, somewhere around $1 million or so.
Right.
Right. What is the time frame to spend down that money from the projects that you?
So that is something that we're moving forward on both of the projects. So at Turkey Farmhouse, as an example, we're trying to determine exactly how many housing units can be there based off what septic is possible, right? So once we determine that, we will be able to bring in various nonprofit developers to talk with us about what they would like to envision there, and we can all then move forward as to narrowing down the various ideas. So figuring out the amount of money, I think really depends on how many housing units. We could also take a different approach, is to say, okay, we anticipate having 3 immediate projects as an example, and we could divide up the money equally or not. So those are discussions that still have to come, but it is, in my eyes, you need more information before you can actually identify what you're going to be needing the dollars for. The same thing with the Tehadawon property, 119 Tehadawon. We currently have discussions going with the Habitat for Humanity, and as a result, sometimes they just take over the project. We're the ones that are donating the land, so we have to see on that. And then we have the opportunity for further down the road to say, okay, what other opportunities are there in town to be able to build more housing units? As an example, one of the early discussions that we had with the Napoli companies was, if Town Hall were to be moved to King Street Common, could this building be used for senior housing? So that again would be a big project, but that is so in the ideation stage that, we don't know. So to answer your question, that's my answer.
I think what I would say is, since you have $1 million that you're sitting on, and yes, you have a plan to use it, but not something concrete, does it make more sense for the CPC committee to hold on to that 90,000, fund your rental program through your balance, and then when the time comes that you need funds, then you apply to the CPC and say, we need funds for this specific thing. We ran out of money.
I think the way that the Affordable Housing Trust is wanting to proceed is to move forward and request the funds at town meeting, because it's sort of like, robbing Peter to pay Paul, in the sense that right now we already have that money available to be able to use on a project. I mean, to some degree, it's no different than conversations that are had about open space. Well, what happens if that becomes available and we don't have that nest egg? Well, right now, that $1 million is the nest egg to be able to use on a major project or some smaller projects that might come up. And by whittling down, 90,000, that's a tenth of what we already have, when in fact, the CPC has those funds available as well. And it's my understanding, the distribution of funds that you all allocate is like 20% to
Yeah.
affordable housing. Right.
That's what it's been.
Yeah. Correct.
This is what you sent out.
So what I just sent out, so that's coming back.
So
so
this
it-
year, it's 115 roughly. Next year, 114 roughly, coming in the community housing bucket.
Right, just got those numbers today.
So you'll be building up your balance in the open space bucket.
No, this is in the community housing bucket.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring in
If the 20% went to
Giving
the,
up
affordable housing trust. Well, no, I mean, I guess my question is, I'm a relatively new, so this year, like how did it work in the past? Did the community housing bucket just automatically get assigned to affordable housing trust? And are we going to go forward like that?
Well, that's what I had asked for in the past, is that whatever the allocation was, that would just go into our account, rather than in the community preservation reserves.
And the money that's already in the account, would it be subject to this kind of agreement situation, or is it, Steve's shaking his head.
No,
This is what I'm saying, we're changing the mode, so this $1 million is sort of outside of.
So that's one of the questions to ask town council, right? Do we need to then allocate? My guess is that this is not something that typically would happen a lot, but again, maybe they can see what other towns have done, or they can provide their opinion. But that $1 million has come through various fee in lieu of from developers, very specifically for affordable housing. And so that's why it's there. Whether or not we need to retroactively have some kind of an agreement, or I think town council should opine on that. For right now, though, on an ongoing basis, I think Mr. Harvey just explained that in years past, those funds were just transferred over. As I explained earlier, the process that we would now be going through is that when we come to you for money, there's going to be an agreement on the back end, and you're going to know what that money is going to be used for.
But this year, it's not just approved 90,000 for the rental assistance, but the 115 that comes in this year isn't just going to go straight to affordable housing trust. It will be in the typical CPC bucket that you will come and apply for.
Correct.
The 90,000.
From what you
So
just
going
said.
forward,
Yes, from what you just said, Mr. Yates, of the 90 that we asked for, that's 90 out of the 115 in that bucket.
okay.
It wasn't really automatic, but they always came in with a project application.
And it was the number that was.
So it would be
allocated.
the estimated number that we would have, so
Mhm.
it wasn't
Okay.
just,
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so that was okay.
And
Yes.
I think I can't speak for the whole finance committee, but from what we discussed before, just giving that entire bucket over to the Affordable Housing Trust was something that we had an issue with.
Right.
Limiting it to a specific thing and having this agreement in place may be a better option. That now your committee still controls that money, has control of that housing bucket, that you're not giving the entire amount over to the Affordable Housing Trust. The thing that we have an issue with is once it leaves your committee it goes to Affordable Housing Trust, the town has no say whatsoever in what that trust does. They're not town funds anymore. They're a trust all to themselves. Town meeting doesn't opine on what they do. They just have that money and they can do with it what they want. That's why I feel it's better that it sits with your committee, as long as you can. You earn any interest on the funds as it sits in the bank accounts waiting, and then as they need it, the specific things, you dish out exactly what they need. I feel a little better about that scenario than what has been happening in the past, where 100% of the funds just go over.
Can I ask you about the bonding issue? Would the Affordable Housing Trust be able to issue bonds for projects with, on the basis of this $1 million? Is it an entity that could do that?
They're not a town entity, so
Okay, so that would also sort of, because especially with housing, you really, it's almost impossible to pay cash for a project. And, more use, there would be more funds to be used if there was bonding available like we're doing with open space.
you would have to hold on to
Yes.
to that bucket of
Yeah.
funds. The town would issue the bonds for
And then
you,
we would
and
pay
you would
through the
take
bucket
it
through
out of
the,
that funds.
or other,
And
or
leave
that.
the bill to the housing trust.
Yeah.
You don't have that option.
So one of the things that I would request this evening, is that your chair and I can talk with town council about this example agreement, if you all believe that it is something that we can start from, and then use this agreement, if town meeting approves the $90,000.
That would be the first one we would.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first thing I would request. And then the second would be that if we're going to use this process moving forward, that the allocation not change. In other words, simply because the funding isn't going to be moved over for an existing project, if it's best for that money to sit in the CPC dollars and build up, that's fine, because there will be projects that it will get used for over time. But if the allocations start changing because, Affordable Housing Trust isn't really using this money right now, so to speak, and then it starts dwindling down, then that in my opinion is, just a detriment to the town residents who at some point could benefit from that money. So that's my opinion.
But this committee can change our allocations from year to year.
Yes.
So,
Or any bucket.
right, so we want
For
to
any
retain that ability. If we want to increase open space to 60%, then we would reduce some of the other categories.
Yes, and all I'm saying is I recognize that it's your purview, your authority. I'm just requesting that it not go down. Just my request.
So this year, it was like 115 or something's coming into that bucket. And we allocated 90,000 out of that. And so that would leave $25,000 in a fund that could, as Steve said, bear interest and be available and.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And then the other thing we had talked about is considering, like Linda said, we can change the percentages. And I think there was some interest in putting more into the undesignated, or what's the term for that? Undesignated, which right now is what, 40% or?
No, it's,
Oh, it's less.
it is right, but, we decided on 25% of the state match, which they're estimating at $84,000, so that would be, 21,000 that we would put into.
But in the.
But I mean, that money will also
standard
be available
funding,
potentially
the
for a
non-matching
specific
funds,
project.
it's a smaller portion.
Yeah, we didn't put anything into
Right.
undesignated. But everything that gets collected during the year that doesn't, like back taxes, the interest earned, that all goes into the undesignated fund, so that even if we don't allocate anything to it, it's still, the undesignated fund still gets built up. I have that. She didn't give me the undesignated bucket, so I'm not sure.
Fred has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I guess my question is maybe a mechanical question. Back when I was on CPC, and I see a few familiar faces still on, we did have requests for supporting housing projects. A couple of projects come to mind, the Pine Tree Park, back in the day. And I was wondering if, there have been any or many other projects like that, requests come to CPC that you have funded. And if so, what, kind of money do you have if one of those kinds of projects come in? Or is the Affordable Housing Trust expected to pick up the next time something happens at Pine Tree Park or one of the other eligible areas in the town that would come to CPC? But, are you saying that if the trust will pick it up, or CPC still manages that piece of it?
From my perspective, I believe that the Affordable Housing Trust should be the one to work on that, so we would work through the trust. As an example, Bartlett is currently on the Housing Authority Select Board member. Nordhaus is on the Housing Authority Board, as well as the Affordable Housing Trust.
Right.
So they brought ideas forward about how to engage with the Housing Authority on projects that they need done. Again, it has to follow CPC guidelines in order to be funded.
So have any projects come from that group to the trust yet?
No, not since you said, I think they got some state money. They were able to leverage state money after those projects. They haven't come through with anything
No, we
since the
haven't.
ones you voted on.
We did a roofing project that was pretty
Yeah.
substantial, and some boiler replacement projects in a lot of the buildings, and the water meter that we funded, but there hasn't been any requests from them lately, mostly because ordinary maintenance kinds of things are not eligible for CPC funding because CPC didn't buy that project. If there's something that endangers the building, like a roof,
Right.
that's eligible, so we could do that, but there haven't been requests recently.
So assuming we totally legitimize, if you will, the trust, then CPC would expect to see no requests for housing support other than the trust. Is that what you're saying? That's really the position that I think the CPC has to decide. Are they comfortable with that or not? And I think that needs, between the board and the trust, I guess it's not two boards, between the board and the trust, that needs to be agreed to and clarified. That from my position.
It would be interesting to see, like other towns, what other community housing, where their community housing projects come from. Because anybody could come in, it wouldn't necessarily be the trust. I mean, another nonprofit could come to us.
So that's my question. So if you basically wash the funds through to the trust, and somebody comes in for a project, how do you support it?
Right.
It's just something for you to think about, and how do you manage that? That's all.
Well, presumably,
I'm sorry?
Presumably, if the trust is doing what it's supposed to do, we would already know about it.
Yeah, then it needs to be documented.
Yeah, and I don't know who else would come in, but it would be interesting to see what other projects have been done.
But if there is such a project, sorry.
Yeah.
If there is such a project and it goes to the Affordable Housing Trust first, are they just gonna turn around and come to your committee for the funding, or? I guess I'm kind of still unclear of when you hit that $1 million. I mean, is this something that if Country Park came to you for this project and you thought it fit with your plan, for example, is that something that you would then come to CPC and say, we have this request, please give us this money? Or is it saying, yes, we can afford this and take it out of our balance?
Correct. So that would be something that the trust would have to decide, and again, if it's a project that is new and we determine that, yes, this is something we can do, then we probably should consider it out of that $1 million. Yes.
I guess from my perspective, and I don't want to speak for your committee, but as a board, you should feel comfortable that you know when to push back to them and say, you know, you're sitting on this money, you still haven't spent it, and it's been 2 years now, trying to dip into your funds and fund it and not come to us every time.
Well, you bring up the implicit in this always is the CPC can say no.
Right.
And then the Affordable Housing Trust can go to some alternate plan. I mean, you know, it's not an automatic wash through.
But but
I'm not saying the CPC would say no, I'm just saying that it's implicit in the system that they could say no.
I just think your group has some thinking to do.
Yeah.
As you enter into this kind of agreement, because once you memorialize it, it's difficult to undo, so.
I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear. The agreement that I'm referencing is for each and every project. It's not a blanket, this is what's going to happen. It's for each and every project, which is what Stuart Sagar and the coalition are, have recommended, is what's currently in law.
Right.
So we should be following
Right.
that. So I don't see any concerns about moving forward.
It's
Yeah,
just a different philosophy.
Right, I think the path we're talking about moving forward with is moving away from the bulk transfer and to a project by project basis.
Correct.
So I think we get away from that concern of there will be no funds in CPC for affordable housing projects. We're moving past that.
In the meantime, there's the $1 million.
Yeah, there's,
Right.
right.
So what do we do in the
But the
interim?
other-
Right, we may have to push
Well,
back.
My only question in terms of the agreement, it sounded like you were suggesting that the agreement would be put into place after town meeting?
After town meeting, before the funds are actually moved. So in other words, if we have an agreement on these dollars, maybe there needs to be a clause in the agreement that says if it's passed at town meeting, then, everything moves forward.
Yeah,
The way that I was looking at it is, well, the money has to be approved by the residents first before, we have the agreement. So that's up to town council.
yeah, I guess putting my
That's now.
resident hat on and thinking about going to town meeting, I would rather that agreement be in place before town meeting, so that as a resident, we can say, okay, we know what the conditions are, we know what the terms are that are gonna be guiding this transfer, as opposed to relying on, we're all gonna make that, come to an agreement afterwards. Seems cleaner.
That's fine. So I will say this, there definitely is this feeling of untrusting that is in the air, and I don't like it. I mean, just, and especially given the fact that, you know, the trust has been working on its own for 5 years. So I took over. You could kind of say that it needed to be put into some kind of order and structure, and that's what I've been trying to do.
And
can see it.
believe me, from my point of view, it's not untrusting. It's just the fact that the meeting is not out of the control of that money. That's all.
Yep.
And the town meeting keeps control as long as it sits with that board. That's it.
And
It's looking after the residents' money, and that's what the finance committee.
yes, and I totally understand it, which is part of why when I found this, I was like, great, this should help tremendously. And the fact that other towns do this, and this will put us in the norm with whatever communities.
And I think even like with the Historical Society, we've not put grant agreements together for that either, and we should, because that's a nonprofit, not a town organization.
Yeah.
And Stuart has asked about that too, so.
Well, I mean, the way that I read this is that CPC should be having agreements with any
Yeah.
entity
Yeah.
that it gives, allocates monies to.
Yes. Do you have a question on the topic or?
Yeah, am I allowed?
Yeah, I'll allow it, yeah.
Okay. Just as a resident, I appreciate everything that you're all doing. I've only attended, a few meetings, town meeting, a recent Jim Duggan gathering. I think the feedback from the finance committee is far from personal, is how I'm hearing it. And I'll just say that the things that I'm hearing, that the aspect of at a town meeting, if somebody were to say, there's $1 million that has been somewhere for 2 years and there's a request for additional money, I can only imagine the public comment based on the meetings that I'm attending. So I support what you're doing, but I just thought I'd chirp in, and I thank you for allowing me to just say that, just to get a perspective of, I'm hearing a lot of resistance to, funding things, and so tightening up is worth considering. I don't think it's personal, or at least I'm trying to head off a problem.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the agreements, or we'll digest them and let's work together to get that one done for town meeting. And then we'll have a template in place, and then it's the next go around is easier.
Exactly.
You have it there.
Exactly. Yeah, this first one, we'll test it out and see if there are any holes that need to be tweaked for any future ones. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There was an agreement that at one point had been considered between the two groups, and again, that was before my time.
Yeah.
So I don't know what
I guess it
happened.
just got dropped. I didn't see anything other than the draft. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, we'll work together, I'm sure.
That sounds great. I look forward to it. Thank you very much for hearing, and I hope that you have an opportunity to read this thrill binding.
Yeah.
Very short.
It was very good. I did, when we first started, I looked it over, and I think it's an improvement, definitely.
Well, thank you all for your time.
All right, so back to where we got last time. We missed a couple of, there are some old balances,
We skipped historic preservation.
we couldn't do the historic preservation because we have to have the revised agenda in 48 hours. That's subject to open meeting law, so they'll just have to.
So, with a public meeting, if it's posted, as long as you're not changing the location and the time, you can still change the subject matter beforehand. So if like the last meeting that we had a couple of things to it the day of, and that's perfectly fine. You can do that.
All right, they told me today that we could not.
Oh.
So that's why I had to pull it back.
Gotcha.
I guess the theory is some interested party wouldn't be notified to in advance or
but-
something.
But you know, in
I don't know
previous
how they let us do
open meeting law research, we've determined that in, you know, the town that I work in, that you can, but
Yeah, and I don't know, because I was gonna look up to see when we send that other one in, but that's what I was told this morning, so it didn't get posted on the revision, so. Hopefully you have enough money in your
We'll have to deal with it
left the budget,
somehow.
yeah.
if we are gonna perhaps consider a vote on the Websterland application, maybe if that, oh, because it won't be on the warrant though, because there's no placeholder for it.
No,
Ah,
yeah.
Put the placeholder in.
I don't know, I mean, I can ask, if we're adding, I mean, they already have the docs in there. I could ask if we could put it in and then have
Another
another
meeting.
meeting.
We're talking about the historic. right?
The historical,
I
yeah.
mean, if it's possible to put it in as a placeholder and have another meeting, that would be helpful. I'm sorry I submitted it at the last minute. Things have happened over the past week that led me to submit it.
I'll see what they say.
so the select board already voted to close the warrant, right?
Yeah, well, it's closed, but we do
Oh.
have, yeah,
Oh.
that's one of the reasons, but I think because we're already on there, whether they would add another
I see.
item. You know, because it's not like
The
it's.
language in the language of the articles is not fixed yet.
Yeah,
It's just an article.
and actually what they have, I forgot, and I missed the Clean Lakes projects altogether,
So you have to have
so I
that.
have to add those anyway.
Yeah, if you
so-
could ask them
But
that.
they've been voted on, so that's the
Oh,
only
I
difference.
see. Yeah, right.
The Clean Lakes ones were added as a revised agenda that day,
Yeah, I know it.
and they were voted on, so.
I know it. I don't understand why they allowed it then and didn't allow it today.
Maybe you could ask them. that.
Unless, there may be a, yeah, I'll look for that up there.
Depends on who you talk to. maybe.
Yeah, it might be, okay. But that's what Diane said today, so. So then the vote to rescind, there were, I think I sent this out with the last. So there were a couple of old projects that have been completed and there's still balances on them. One was the Regional Housing Services. I don't know why it's not $5,000 anymore. They must have had something left over that they used. So there's $4,806.37. So that came out of the Community Housing Reserve, so that could go back in. The Wellington Cooper Trail Project, which Joe Layden, when he was here, was working on, that never got off the ground. And I talked to Amy Green about it, and she said, if it were to come back, it would probably be different, materially different enough that we said, let's just return that. That was from 2001. So the full amount of $17,670 will go back to recreation. And the first Cloverdale Boardwalk from 2021 is another, there's a little over $5,000 remaining. And Amy said that project's completed. She doesn't need the funds for that, so we can return those. There may be one other from Open Space Project, but these are definite, so we'll do these and we can also look at the others at the November town meeting. So,
Can I ask a question? The housing, when we did the roofing project years ago, my understanding was that there was a couple of $1,000s left over from that.
There
And
is.
Lisa's been holding on to it. And because, you know, there's always roofing issues and other things that she could spend it on. I don't think
Right.
she spent it.
No, there's still a lot, and it's interesting because somewhere, and I keep trying to find it, there's like a 3-year, the projects are only supposed to be open for 3 years.
Oh.
Is that true?
I'd heard that.
Yeah, and
yes.
of course, you know, when you know it, you can't find it.
Yeah.
And those are now almost 10 years old. There's almost $25,000 left for the heating project,
All
the
right.
heating units, and $6,253 for the roof replacement. So you've got a total of like $31,000 sitting out there. which either should be used or we should roll that back.
Back in.
I mean, it's too late now, so you've got till November to, but we should look into that and see
Okay.
what the scoop is. Because that would be good to clean that up as well.
Okay, so what you're talking about today does not include any.
Does
of
not
that
include those.
$30,000.
No, the housing was one of the, when they used to, when Keith used to do the regional housing with MAPC, and then they ended up funding it through town, so I think
Okay.
this was one that just never was
Oh,
used.
okay.
The original, like I say, the original allocation was 5,000, so I don't know where the 100 and something went, but.
All right, well, I'll see Lisa on Wednesday.
Okay. I'll talk to her. I did put a little motion together. Just because it was easier than trying to, because when I wasn't here, I wasn't sure if I could verbalize what I wanted to say, but somebody wanna make a motion to?
A motion to rescind the old completed project balances that were enumerated by Carolyn.
Okay, that's good, and I'll copy this over.
Second that.
All right, there's a motion to rescind the projects for the regional housing services, the Wellington Cooper project, and the Cloverdale Boardwalk. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. So we'll do that. So that'll be good. That's one cleanup. What's next? Vote on available blended funds. So I'm assuming it hasn't changed since you sent out the last memo, Steve?
That should have been it.
Okay, so I'll set that out.
Two items.
Thanks. Let me find it here. So much flying around. My mother, I was gonna buy a whiteboard for the dining room so I could keep track of everything. Did I send it to you, like late?
I remember seeing it, but I don't remember what day it was. So I feel like there had been like a flurry of
I know.
CPC.
I tried to get them all together and then I don't. I thought it was just today I sent it.
Let's see.
People have no trust.
This is what you sent today. It has the rescind unpaid balance.
It must be an email from Steve. Yeah, it says that. Oh, that's more than what I saw, okay.
Yeah, it did change,
Yeah,
right?
it
Forgot a
did.
couple of things.
Yeah, some big ones, okay.
Oh, the CPC article update.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, the amount right now is, $287,136, and that's in total. And that's made up of, money coming from the Grimes Host Community Agreement for $50,000, which will go into housing. Jones Meadow Host Community Agreement is $6,000, and that's also housing. And then we have free cash for the Long Lake docks. That's to offset the dock project that we just voted on. That's $42,436. And then, I lost it just at the time. I don't have the numbers for. I feel like my mother, I hit a button.
The 90,000 from Community Housing Reserve, so the Wilton Affordable Housing Trust, Rental Assistance Program, I think that was the last one on the.
Okay, there was another big one in the middle, 118.
That's the debt service and the tax cards.
Or am I looking at the wrong thing now?
I think you're looking at something different.
I think I'm looking, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, so for Lucy's Land, what did it get? Oh,
You want me to say it?
Yes, you
You
present
read it
it.
up. I tried to scroll over and
Oh, now I see where I was supposed to be. Ah. Do you want to read it?
yeah, if you have it.
Sure. So yeah, Lucy's Land, it's $5,100.
No, those are the outflows, right?
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the.
Never mind, everyone.
That's the debt service.
So you have the 50,000, the 6, and the 42 you already talked
Yeah.
about. So the open space for Lucy's Land, Cobb's Lane, and Boxborough Road, the debt service is 59,100. Historical resources for the Houghton Building, for debt service is 11,250. And the Recreation Reserve Fund for the tennis courts, 118,350. Total is 287,136.
So these are funds that are coming
Into
From the town.
And do they just automatically go to the buckets from which they
will be
would
expended.
come?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that counts toward our state match.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's 287. Anyone have any issue with that one?
No, is that pretty close to 3%? Just
Curious.
Nope.
Well,
It's about half percent.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause
Yeah, it's like
400.
500% and yeah. So it's sort of creeping up toward 2.
yeah. Do we have a motion for that one?
I'll make a motion that do we have to accept them or what? Just,
Yeah, to accept the blended funds from
the town or?
It's gonna be Article 5.
Make a motion to accept the blended funds in Article 5 on the town meeting warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you for helping us get through that one. And we will forward to another one next year. The next on the agenda is just any other discussion. I don't know if there's anything else, Steve, that you have from financial point of view.
No, we have a joint meeting here tomorrow night, with Finance Committee, Select Board, and we'll be giving our recommendations to articles, including CPC.
Okay. And the wording is still not complete, right? There's still another meeting to go before they.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. All right. I'll get those corrections into it.
Well, how are you gonna deal with the Webster land?
There'll be an article put on by the Select Board, but the
Okay.
motion will be,
But it won't be part of the CPC or warrant or article.
we'd have to see what happens with the purchase price and whether he accepts it for the appraisal, because that's the only way we can use CPC funds.
Right.
But it will be a separate article, so we don't have to worry about it
Okay.
being in the middle.
Overshadowing
Yeah.
everything.
Any public input? Do you have any other items? Yes, sir.
Briefly, Rob Brownson, 25 Juniper Road. Are the approved projects that you work on, do they exist somewhere like the town clerk or somebody such that I can find out about them? I will tell you, I'm specifically trying to find out who the grant writers are of the last X years, because there seems to be this crying need for many of the commissions and boards for grant writers, so I'm thinking you folks have probably experienced many of those people over your tenures.
Yeah.
Amy Green has been huge in writing grants for land purchases.
And that's why I'm concerned with her.
And Mara too help for,
Are the documents approved? Because like,
Yeah.
John Folsom just ended up doing one for Clean Lakes Committee. So I'm just trying to find people who are familiar or experienced with it, because somebody's asking me for these people. Can we find some more of them?
I don't remember whether it was the open space and recreation plan or whether it was, there may have been, I know there was words in there about the town needs to assign more resources to grant production.
Yeah, and finance has also dealt with this issue.
Yeah, last year's are on, the CPC section of the town website. I think there's a button that says, and I'm working on putting the button on for this year, now that everything is complete, but.
And so thank you. And just a general question, is it the town clerk, or how do I go about finding out more about how to consider applications? Something as simple as, is it a committee or a commission that has to be the body? I read in the application that you have a question with regard to it. Is it approved by the appropriate seemingly feeder groups that you would expect to be in support of an application? But is it something like a body like that has to approve, or can a resident present something? That's just an example of a question, but I don't want to take, there's too many people here, so I'm looking for offline. Is it a town clerk, or where can I kind of find an in with regard to understanding the work that you folks do and not take your time and not be a pest?
So I don't think a citizen unaffiliated with the nonprofit or a town board committee could submit something on behalf of them. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah. So
because honestly, as I'm experiencing, 30 seconds, everybody seems to be exhaustingly busy. So as I have very specific issues, my experience is just getting, everybody's very, very good. So this is not a slam, but it's difficult. Everybody's so busy. So how do you get very specific with regard to layers of detail that isn't 2 minutes in duration in order to present huge challenges that I'm hearing from residents, et cetera?
yeah, and one key thing that could possibly be done in that situation is by attending those meetings and working with the committee, you could even propose that they submit an application for funding, and if, depending on their level of comfort, maybe you could help them draft something. I don't know if a citizen could submit on behalf of a board or a department or even a nonprofit. You have to either be essentially the town or a nonprofit with a particular stake that's eligible for funding through CPA. So
you answered my question. I'm sure I've used my 2 minutes.
And I would suggest, if you're particularly interested in the community preservation end of it, the Community Preservation Coalition has an incredible website on all things CPA. There's a lot of technical documents. It has the statute, and that might give you some guidance. And there's a database, so that's a good way to understand what we deal with.
Thank you.
Do you want to become a volunteer grant writer?
I've been asked by somebody of importance, not in the room right now, to can you find us some? And so I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, we tend to have whoever, a committee member. We don't, except for Amy, I guess. I mean, she's professional, not really a professional grant writer, but I don't think we've ever had a professional grant writer come in.
And that's the challenge. Some of your boards and committees have staff people assigned to them that can do that work. And some, like Clean Lakes Committee, they don't. And so there I've witnessed the challenges associated with the eligibility process, and it's not insignificant. And so to layer on top of them other ideas or et cetera, it seems burdensome and pest-like. Can't do it.
I think, just generally in terms of the way that things operate. Unfortunately, not to throw Carol under the bus, but if you have a question for a particular committee, you kind of have to approach the chair or a member just to find out how to get through it. There isn't.
The challenge is getting to that chair. Like if he wanted to email me and he doesn't know my name.
Your name's
You have
on,
to
well, your
go
name is
through-
on
I
the,
can
right.
figure that
Yeah.
out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Too much time. Thank you.
Thank you, Finance Committee.
Thanks. The next item that we need to do is amending our minutes from October 18th. So Diane had emailed me and she was trying to certify the bond for the tennis courts. And you know, those things when you're involved in it looks great, looks fine. And then when you go back to read them, like this does not have any bearing on what we voted on. So our minutes were not well put, spelled out to what we needed to have done. Yeah, so what we didn't record was that the $400,000 that came from the overlay reserve account and that we were accepting that transfer. So the minutes just simply read that we approved the tennis court project with $400,000 from the recreation reserve and $334,000 was to be bonded. But what we really need to say is that to approve the tennis courts for a total project of $734,000 with $400,000 that will be transferred to the recreation reserve from the overlay reserve account and to bond $334,000 to be paid through the CPA reserve.
What do you mean by the overlay?
Remember when they gave us blended funds at the last town meeting? It came from the overlay surplus. Well, they explained it to us.
Okay, never mind.
That was
It's okay.
too much information. It was a bucket of money from somewhere that was
Okay,
that
it's
they
okay.
no
allocated-
longer useful.
Yeah,
Okay, never mind.
so that was voted on, but we need to do this.
I move we amend the minutes
Okay.
As
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 Carolyn.
I
Yeah.
just babbled
I
about.
Right.
second it.
All in favor of the motion as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Diane will be happy. Okay, we're getting there. I didn't
Oh,
send
the
you the
minutes.
minutes.
Had sent them
Mitt
out.
sent them out, and I had the ones from before.
To get
Oh,
them
they're
there.
on my work computer too. Shoot.
I totally forgot today too. I was like, okay, add
Yeah,
in and send them out.
all right. So future meeting schedule. April, we would have an April 17th meeting, which I guess we should just go ahead and schedule.
Seems like it.
We may need, I'm guessing, well, we won't have the Webster allocation yet, because he was saying like May 1st.
hoping for sooner, but
Yeah.
What is it? Should we meet if we don't have that info?
and I will not be here. for that.
Yeah, it's school vacation week, right?
It's the 17th.
What's that?
I'm not here on the 17th. Yeah, I'm not here either on the 17th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there isn't a lot of business, maybe we could hold off.
Yeah,
until early
because,
May.
I mean, we could talk about stuff, but there's nothing urgent that needs to get done before May town meeting. And we're probably gonna have to meet before. So town meeting is the 7th? Right, the first Tuesday?
Believe so.
We should all know that. I'm pretty sure this is April. May 7th, yes. Yeah, annual meeting is May 7th, so it would be nice if we could hold off until May 7th and we could, I don't know if many of us will attend town meeting, so we could do it ahead of time. I think we'll probably just follow the lead of whatever the town, you know, I'm sure they'll be in touch with us. If they need. to
Well, I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be
they
there.
Have to be there.
Should we do maybe like a May 6th meeting though, just to kind of work out the bugs, because the Webster land is
I know, it's
it's gonna be
true.
a lot to consider.
Yeah, we do have that extra day.
So that's Monday, May
It's Monday,
6th?
May 6th. You want to count on a meeting then? I mean, again, we can always change it if,
I think it'd be better than like in the corner of the gym, kind of
I
like,
know.
we
Well,
got
I-
10 minutes, make a decision.
yeah, hopefully we have some documents, by that point. Well, we'll know,
Yeah, we'll have the appraisal and Concom or select board will have submitted an application for eligibility and funding that we'll be able to consider. So at least we'll have everything laid out, and at least some more time to really weigh things
Yeah.
and see our best move.
agreed.
Good idea.
So May 6th at 7 PM.
Are people available, May 6th?
Yes.
We'll do the same thing, we'll put it here, hybrid. And hopefully, it will be all ready to go.
Yes.
As
And that's,
a big,
one way or another, it'll be.
yeah, it'll be interesting. It will be interesting. Anything else?
I move for adjournment.
All in favor? please say
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Stop.